Good morning. What's up, you guys? Hi. And we're live.
You want to sit down here? Bring your breakfast here? Yeah?
So guys, I am waiting for a few more of you to roll on into this live. I posted this morning that we were doing a live as a family today. And we obviously normally post our videos on Tuesdays, but it was really important to me to participate in Blackout Tuesday yesterday and really more so put towards the information that we're needing right now to support the Black community. So, I see that you guys are here. Thank you guys for joining us. This means so much to me. I see that so many of you guys are on here. And so this is All Things Adrienne Live, and for me, you can't watch a show called All Things Adrienne without knowing all the things that rest heavy on my heart and my mind at night, and without knowing all the people that make me who I am as well. So that's why it was really important for me to have my family be a part of this. As some of you may not know, they actually RV'd all the way from New York so that we could quarantine and be together. And obviously so much has happened since then. So I'm gonna just introduce you to my family in case you don't know who they are. Adrienne over here. This is my husband, Israel.
Hello.
This is my niece. What's your name?
Jet.
Jet Marie. This is my sister, Claudette.
Claudette.
My brother-in-law, Jerd Alexander. I was gonna give you your full name, middle, and everything. And what's your name?
Say it loud. What's your name?
Bow.
That's Bo Harper. This is my mother, Nilda. Felt like I should put that Spanish on there.
Nilda.
Hit you with that Nilda. And this is my Papa Joe. As you can see, you guys, we are a multicultural family, and we celebrate that. And I think that regardless of that, we should be having these conversations in our home, and we have been having these conversations around this island here in the kitchen. And I really wanted to do this hopefully to inspire, to encourage you to have these same conversations in your home about the racial injustice that is currently happening in our world. So I know that there are going to be comments on here. We are going to be answering those. But for me, the first thing I knew I wanted to tackle when I came on here was discussing the Black Lives Matter movement and why it is that it was important and significant to me to post that on All Things Adrienne's Instagram. I have to give a huge shout out and love to my King community family who helped me run that page. Obviously, I run both of my businesses and I also have my own personal page. But when I realized that we hadn't posted there, it was really important to me that we speak our hearts and our minds. And you can't have a YouTube platform and not use it. That's just how I feel. So for me, it's important to use my platform to get my voice out there so that you guys can hear what I feel, what's on my heart, and where I stand. So I hashtag Black Lives Matter, and there was people on there that came back and said, all lives matter. So that was the first thing I wanted to tackle on here, was why that's important to me, what the Black Lives Matter movement is about, and why it's offensive and there's another word that I'm looking for. Somebody help me. What's the word? Why it's not okay to say all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter. As a family, guys, we've been having these conversations, so everybody's just kind of going to chime in. And we've been following people like Carl Lentz and seeing memes that help us explain why Black Lives Matter is important. I'm going to let Jared take over.
Yeah, so I guess in my view, when you rebut or appear to rebut all lives matter with Black Lives Matter with all lives matter, it seems to devalue the issue at hand, right? Mm-hmm. Right? By saying Black Lives Matter, it's very important that people understand that we're not saying that Black Lives Matter more,
Correct,
or that only Black Lives Matter, but rather there is an acknowledgement that there's a problem with respect to how Black people in particular.
I don't want you guys to miss this, so I know that you guys are saying you can't hear him because he's too far. Can you help me open this to bring it over? Again, I don't really care about the production. Don't care about the production of this video. For me, it's about the message. So I'm gonna bring the camera on over so that we can
right.
have this conversation. You can hear my brother. He
So
can
I'll
hold it.
just, I'll just repeat myself just briefly. So I think to address your point, when people rebut Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter, it seems to devalue the issue at hand.
Correct.
And the issue at hand is that Black people have suffered disproportionately at the hands of police brutality. We're not saying that Black Lives Matter more, not saying that only Black Lives Matter, right? We're just saying Black Lives Matter as well. Black Lives Matter too, right? And Carlen said something, and I've been trying to kind of like convey this in a way that people could understand and feel. And what I've been saying is, you don't go to an AIDS rally and say, well, what about, cancer? Right? And Carlen's actually put it unbelievably eloquently. He said, anyone with a functioning brain understands that all lives matter.
Say that one more time.
Anyone with a functioning brain understands that all lives matter. But since when does focusing on one issue disparage another issue?
That's right.
Right? So I think it's important for us to be able to empathize with anybody. And another thing.
Anybody in any community
Right.
and.
And there's another illustration that
Yeah,
might
that's
be
the
on
one I
point.
put. If you follow me on all things Adrienne's Instagram, I had to defend my statement of Black Lives Matter and come on there and try to educate in the best way I could in the moment.
Right.
And we were like, okay, if you are on a street and your house is on fire, would you scream, all houses are on fire, and would you hose down all of the houses?
All houses matter.
All houses matter, sorry, yeah. All houses matter. Or would you just hose down the house that's actually on fire?
Right.
Like, let's use some common sense for this, you guys.
Right.
Obviously, we know that the constitution of our heart is that all lives matter. But that's not the concept of the movement. The concept of the movement is that right now we are focusing on the lives that are being oppressed, that are being brutalized, that are being, that are suffering from injustice. And that is the point. Like, I pray that you guys hear our hearts when we say this and that you open your mind.
I think, isn't it? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, go
I
ahead.
didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
you.
babe,
I think this has become so politicized.
Yeah.
And it's become like a dividing line. Even COVID has become politicized. And I had a great call from a friend of mine yesterday who's a Jewish, beautiful man, great attorney, great music industry person, who literally answered the phone and he said, how do I talk to my 16-year-old about this? He didn't say, hi, Israel. He said, how do I talk to my kid about this? And I just said, let me tell you something. When they were shooting up synagogues a while back,
Yeah.
I didn't go on these people who were standing in solidarity with our Jewish brothers and sisters saying, yeah, but what about Black Lives Matter? What about, we're saying people who are being targeted and shot at
Deserve
and
to get focused
deserve our
on.
focus. Why? Because we are still a part of one human race.
That's right.
Ultimately, you cut Jerd, you cut Mommy, you cut A, you cut me, you're going to find the same color blood bleeding. We are a part of one body. And this is not a religious statement. This is, we live on this earth together. And the idea that we're going to draw lines and make people less than or more than is the problem. So the fact that people have jumped on our pages and said, yeah, but all lives matter. Yeah, but all lives matter.
Yeah, but you missed the point.
Yeah, and all
what I
lives
wanna
cannot
say.
matter until Black lives matter, until Jewish lives matter, till what, if people were
Asian
systemically
and natives
going after
and-
Asians right now and murdering them in the street on television, would we be saying, yeah, but blacks have been beaten down all this time? No, we would say, let's stand with our Asian brothers and sisters.
Correct.
I don't understand why this is so difficult for people, but I also do, because we have these really painful, divisive lines that have been drawn in our nation. And we are saying, listen, we stand for all people. We're asking for all people to stand for us right now.
That's right. But you just tapped on something, which is the systemic and generational mindset and oppression that's been going on for years, and what that means. Guys, people are on here standing with us. So I want to just shout out Genel Brown. I kind of want to get back on here because, as you can see, I'm struggling holding the thing. You know, that might be helpful, yeah. But Irma Rios, who's saying, I love you guys. My son is biracial, Puerto Rican, African American. He's 25, and I called him and said, I haven't seen you. And he says, Mom, I'm scared to go out. I'm scared to be a target. So sad. So it's also something we want to talk about as a family. How do we talk to our children about what's going on? How do we prepare our children of color, our biracial children? How do we prepare our children in general? Like Israel just said, speaking about, this is so much better, babe, thank you. Israel was just speaking about his friend calling him and saying, what do I tell my son? I think at this point, I was praying that you guys could see us as a family and recognize how important, how significant it is to explain to your children why Black Lives Matter is a movement, and also that you find it important to have these conversations. They are difficult, they are painful, they are complicated. But I pray that this inspires you and encourages you to have these very real conversations. I have two nieces who, how old are you? You 8?
I'm 8.
How old are you?
I'm 5 and a half.
She's 5 and a half. She wants that half to count. And it's just important. So I kind of wanted my family to talk on just how we are dealing with that as a family. I mean, just recently, Jed is getting to an age where she gets it, you know, where she's starting to understand. It's in simple things like going on roadblocks and hearing racist comments. Like, we just had to experience that, and you guys can talk on that more, just kind of like.
Yeah, I mean, so bear with me because it's pretty kind of a complicated subject when you're talking about how to approach discussing race with a child, you know, much less a black child. And so, you know, the way that we've approached it in our household, and we have the luxury of homeschooling, so we have a little bit more control over the content. You know, for us, there were two significant significant pitfalls that we tried to avoid. The first is in talking about race and teaching about the history of race in this country is to not unintentionally teach inferiority or insecurity. And I'll talk a little bit about that and how that's come up in a real context. The other part of it is to not make this a black versus white thing, but rather a justice versus injustice thing.
Yes.
So
yes.
in that, with couching it in that context, you're able to shore up in your children the idea that we have and we need you know, white brothers and sisters of all persuasions to stand with us as we face this question of injustice. So for example, you know, maybe this was a couple years ago during Black History Month, one of Jet's friends came up to her and said, did you know that, you know, black people weren't allowed to drink from the water fountains of white people? And it was somewhat, you know, I was taken aback by the statement because I get the intent. The intent was to teach a little bit about civil rights. But the sad part is that if that was the takeaway of that child from that lesson, it's very dangerous, right? Because then the question arises, without context, the question then arises, well, why weren't blacks allowed? And is there something wrong with me? That's the next kind of logical question. And so there's a real pitfall there. And so when we approach the question of race and when we approach the question of civil rights in this country, we couched it in the context of, you know, what?
I think that they were jealous of their beauty.
We're going to keep that in the final cut. So,
But they're children, they speak their hearts, they speak their minds.
You are beautiful, that's right. We're all beautiful in our own ways, right? So you know, we approached it from basically in history, there have always been injustices perpetrated against people for one reason or another, from the people of Israel and Egypt to the Native Americans, by the Europeans,
That's right.
to the blacks, suffered at the hands of whites in America. And so when you couch it largely in this context of justice versus injustice, well, then you can have your group of people that stand for justice, which can be of all hues, colors, and backgrounds, and
Yeah.
your people that stand for injustice, and it doesn't become a black versus white thing.
Correct.
And it certainly doesn't become this thing where you need to feel insecure about who you are and feel like there's something inherently wrong with you because people don't like you. It's been happening since the beginning of time.
Or because of your ancestors past, or because of what has happened. Does that make sense?
Of course.
Where you're like, well, this was done to them. Was it done because there's something wrong with us?
Right.
And I think our history sometimes can cause insecurities.
Well, Claude,
and that's the reality of it.
you made an observation earlier
So it's
about
important.
like how that even the history is kind of taught in traditional schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jared and I, we decided to homeschool, and that was a big reason why we decided to homeschool, was because we wanted to teach our kids about their culture, about where they came from. Because Adrienne and I went to public school, and
I did too.
and yeah, you did too,
Same.
we all went
All
to
of
public
us.
school. But we are taught such a Eurocentric history, and when you looked at the books, there's nobody that resembled, Jared, my daughter,
children.
Adrienne, and
In large part, yeah.
in large part, yeah. It's far and few in between,
Yeah.
and even now we've made strides, but it's still, when you look at,
Give me an example.
well, even in homeschooling material, it was difficult to find someone that looked like my kids, and we just kept thinking, man, we got to do better. And it's funny because I was telling Jared, and I learned this from what was that?
But,
John Leguizamo.
okay.
Yes.
When he
Latin for more.
Latin history for more.
Latin history for
It's
moron.
incredible if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
See it.
and it talks about
I learned so much from watching
A
it. I
lot.
realized I too was a moron.
yeah. So he said, when you're studying from young, you're taught European fine art at a very young age. They knew, even I knew what the Mona Lisa was.
Yeah.
But you have all these brown and black artists that are so important, and yet when you decide to learn about them, it's because it's an elective, and it's also called folk art.
Yeah.
The difference even in that.
Systemic racism. That's really what what we're really getting down to. And I think it's important so you guys aren't like, well, what are they talking about? It's systemic racism, and it's been happening for years and years and years and generations and generations and generations. And it goes way back to the Mona Lisa, to why that gets put up front versus black and brown art.
Right.
So
Christopher Columbus discovered.
That was a big
the American
thing.
continent.
That's a very big. We all know that Christopher Columbus was not the
Still taught.
discoverer of America. Yet it is still taught.
Rosa Parks sat down because she was tired.
Not
She
true.
was not tired.
no, she was taking a stance for
Yeah.
what was right. She was doing something to go against injustice. And it's just important for us that we raise up a generation that is willing to fight for injustice, that's willing to speak up about it, that is aware of it. A lot of it is awareness. I think there's so many people that just genuinely are so disconnected from what's happening. We had a whole conversation about proximity, and like, if you feel like, well, where is this happening? What's going on? And there definitely are people that are waking up today like, but what is this? What's happening? We want to encourage you to become aware, to make yourself aware. If I get it, if it's not connected to your family and doesn't affect you, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be aware of it, that you shouldn't educate yourself in it, that you shouldn't care. You should care. I kind of want to see what's happening here. Go, Claude, keep talking.
And I also challenge moms to, whether you're homeschooling or you're not homeschooling, I challenge you to go to your school, to the PTA meetings, to actually pick up, and look at what your kids are reading.
Yeah.
Because it's important to put that very important history in there, so that we're not blind to it, so that we're not, so that our kids know their own history. This is the United States of America, and yet we're only being taught one history,
One perspective.
one perspective.
Yeah.
We're only looking at people that look, let's be honest, like me, like my mom in the book.
Yeah.
And I it's a really important thing, because we are the people that should be guiding what our kids are being fed. And yet I think that a lot of us don't know what's happening. I have friends that were literally taught, and I told Jared this, that still the whole Christopher Columbus thing, and that their kid was taught that Christopher Columbus discovered America, and I'm not joking, that Native Americans are disappearing because of aliens. This was being taught. So people need to, I'm not joking, and this was in a private school.
Have mercy.
So this, exactly. So these are things that we have to, it comes down to the things that our kids as 3-4-year-olds, they're reading, they're listening to, and they're not being taught our history, everyone's history,
Yeah.
as a whole, and there's very little representation, and I think that's so important.
Yeah. I have a question about what's currently happening. Black Lives Matter. Like, I know Jet wanted to do Black Lives Matter on TikTok. Like, she's been asking us about it for a week, and I actually thought it was amazing what you responded with. You wanted to know why she wanted to do it, and that she wasn't just doing it because it was something that was popular on TikTok, but that she actually understood the meaning behind Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Yeah.
And I actually told her that she actually had to do a writing assignment explaining it before she could do it.
And
So-
did you, Jet?
She hasn't done it
that
yet.
she has to do a writing
Okay.
assignment to explain why she wants to do it, and so that's in the works, right, Jet?
Does that count as homework?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
I
it
guess
does.
so.
But
Counts
it's
as homework.
it's significant, and again, we want to get down
To the core.
to the core of it. You could turn it this way. I feel like we're leaving Papa out. I feel like our lens. But you made us crooked now.
I'm sorry. Hey, that's this.
Christina, I also want to ask if you can send some of the comments to Israel instead. If you can hit Lana and get Israel's number, because we're on my phone right now, so I can't really see the comments. But I do want to read some of them and kind of make this a two-way conversation, so it's just not us talking at you, but that we are actually having a conversation. We had just a simple conversation yesterday. I was on FaceTime with Amanda Seals, and we were having so many talks about this sort of thing. And my niece talked about how someone came on her roadblocks and was saying racist comments. And she came on and explained to Amanda, and what did you say? Why, that your character is what? Come, you can come.
My character is
Hold on, I
black.
want you to be on camera.
Oh, go ahead.
My character on Roblox is black, like me, but actually a little darker.
Yeah, because that's what you wanted.
Yeah, and my character on Roblox is the same color on my skin.
Or so she believes.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. It's how they identify, and I think that's amazing. With that being said, what happened?
Well, this girl came up to me and said, because I was playing with my cousin, her character is also black. And
Shout out to Anna.
Anna. And she actually said that, why is everyone so black and it's ugly? But I told her that everyone is equal in their own way.
That's right. And everyone's beautiful, right?
And somebody in Roblox said Black Lives Matter.
Yes, they did. And they do. They do matter.
That's right.
That's so true. So we're just having conversations, and I also think it's important that your children overhear your conversations, because the things that you are saying in your home, your children are sponges, and they're listening to them. So whether they be comments of justice, or if we're gonna keep it real, if they're racist comments, your children are hearing those things, and that is the way that their mind.
All your little N-words.
Yes,
all
they
your little-
hear all of
There's a
it.
black guy, a white guy, and a Chinese
They
guy.
hear all of it.
Yeah.
They hear all of it. So I'm reading you guys' comments. They say you guys are so precious, young ladies, so awesome. But this is what we're instilling in them, that they are beautiful and that everyone is beautiful. And we can do both of those things. We can teach, like Jet just said, everyone is beautiful in their own unique way, and also represent the movement of Black Lives Matter. Literally, you just saw that happen right here.
And indeed, we have a lot of white brothers and sisters
Absolutely.
who are standing with
Allies.
blacks. It is not black versus white.
It is
justice
all of us
versus
against
injustice.
racists.
That's
Justice versus injustice.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let me speak to that, because I was raised in a white family. All of my siblings are white. My mother's white. My stepfather's white. But my parents modeled such a, what I would call a kingdom principle, is that we are all children under God.
Amen.
And it was not a question of blacks need a different type of treatment. No, we need an equal type of treatment.
Yes.
I remember coming home and asking my dad, what's the N-word? And my dad, white guy, red face, got so upset. He's like, listen, settle that by fighting the next person that calls you that. Hit him right in the face. You have my permission. So I spent a lot of my elementary, junior high, and high school in fights. And I've come to understand that that's maybe not the best way to get things done. So I educated myself, but I appreciated that my parents didn't have a Black Lives Matter, but
There was
to
no
their-
but.
They just said, your life is precious to God, period.
Amen.
And we saw a comment the other day that said, to our white brothers and sisters, our future livelihood depends upon the conversations that you have with your children about this right now. When I said earlier, when I was talking to my friend, I said, make sure your child, your 16-year-old child, leaves that room after that conversation fully aware of how
That's right.
you feel. Because if you want to explain to them, this is how I feel about my brothers and sisters in the struggle right now, there should be no room for wiggle. Well, I think my dad feels this, but he added a caveat or an asterisk to, but there's some that are, no. Listen, every life is precious. And I don't understand. Jerd said it best. If you have a problem with the melanin of this statement, it is about justice versus injustice. It is about equality versus inequality. Period. Full stop. End of story.
And somebody said, somebody said, we don't have the luxury of nuance at this moment.
Say it louder.
We don't have the luxury of nuance at this moment. We have to be very clear about what we're focusing on.
That's right.
And why we're focusing on it. And to dilute the message and to dilute the movement with all lives matter, it's just a useless platitude that, is frankly offensive and not useful in the slightest.
Okay, so Jerd. Jerd is a very accomplished attorney, a very, very learned man.
Learned.
And he is
From the Bronx.
from the Bronx,
From
raised
the
in
Bronx, raised in the Bronx.
So now, instead of people saying all lives matter, okay, because we're getting this now, and it's a valid question. Instead of them pushing back that blatantly, they're going, well, what do you say about the protests and the people looting and the violence that's ensuing as a result of their pain and that sort of thing? Like, because that seems to be the thing. Like, what's your stance on that? Push back on that.
A question before that. Has
Yeah.
anyone died during the riots?
Probably.
Yes.
They have. No, I'm just
Yes, sorry,
asking.
people have died. People have been shot by the police. Like there's this one man that was shot. He was known for cooking. That was in Kentucky, in Louisville, Kentucky. So people have, if I'm understanding correctly, again, I said this was a casual conversation. I don't have all the answers, but people have actually been killed by police during this rioting, and I don't believe that
Yeah, I
people
don't
have
know.
been killed from the looting. But tell me if I'm wrong.
You have to speak up louder because we took the microphone.
Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, in response to Israel's question, what I would do, I would direct people to the Daily Show's
Both sides have died. Got it.
page. Yeah, and I honestly, I really don't think it's kind of besides the point, right? Because Trevor Noah was very eloquent on this topic, and he put it way better than I could ever put it. But he kind of said, in short strokes, he says, the reason people typically don't loot, don't vandalize, and don't commit crimes, in a riot sense, is because there's a social contract. There's an agreement that if we all adhere to the same set of rules, we'll all be treated, fairly and justly. And so when you see George Floyd with a knee on his neck for, nearly 9 minutes,
Correct.
literally with a very, very calm set of police officers observing and or perpetrating at the same time, very calmly, which to me shows that they've done it a million times. When you see that happening, you know, and you kind of know in your soul that this is what they do, and you know it's unlikely that they'll suffer repercussions because that's what's happened in the past countless times, and that's a fundamental breakdown of that social contract. That social contract means nothing at that point. And so if you're gonna point a finger to the looters, and this is what Trevor Noah said, you know, well, I don't know if it was Trevor Noah said this one, but somebody said it. If you're gonna point a finger at the looters, then you better have all other 9 fingers pointing back to America and its systems
Correct.
that have demonstrably broken that social contract.
100%. Say it again.
I said if you're gonna
They
point
are
a
not
finger-
doing this just
Yeah.
because they woke up one day and said, I would like, this is a reaction to years of action. Like you cannot, like I always hear people say, you can't have an action without a reaction.
That's right. Yeah,
So,
he said it was
Somebody said you need your own podcast.
For sure.
Look at that.
But say that again in your words, how you said it was perfectly.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, the other way he kind of put it, and I thought it was poignant, was that he said, people are asking, well, what does it benefit you to loot Target? And it's sort of a joke in his like comedic sense. He said, well, how does it not benefit you to loot Target? Right? The only reason I didn't loot Target before is because I was upholding my end of the social contract.
Yes.
You
That's
guys
it.
clearly are not holding up your end of the social contract, so all bets are off.
That's it.
All bets are off.
That's literally.
And
that
by
is
the
it.
way, I'm just to be clear,
We are not saying.
I'm not advocating
At all.
for any sort of senseless violence.
Have some sense
but
while
it's
listening
a very
to this.
important thing that, and this is, I think honestly, this is the fundamental point here. People who are inclined not to be empathetic to the situation, who are inclined to be defensive, who are inclined not to give a damn, will find a reason and something to point to
Yes.
for why things are the way they are.
Correct.
They'll say, well, you don't say anything about blacks killing blacks. That is stupid. Of course we do. And of course it's the
100%.
case that statistically, you know, most white homicides are committed by other whites and most black murders are committed by other blacks. Not the issue, right? But the point is that people who are not inclined to lead with empathy and not inclined to lead with love and with heart will find a reason to deflect and devalue the movement, and they'll point to the looters, they'll point to useless.
I also think it's incredibly important. Sorry, I was getting a phone call. To also clarify that a lot of the looting is happening from people that are not protesters.
Yes.
Protesters are protesting, looters are looting.
Big difference.
Let's clarify that. I think it's incredibly important.
To be clear,
I love
you're
this.
not
Somebody said
promoting
this
violence,
is.
right?
Jared is
Definitely
not
not.
promoting.
Violence? Okay.
We are absolutely not promoting violence. We think it's important to recognize
love these
that the
chats.
people that are looting are not for the cause. If you are looting, you are not for the cause.
Period.
Okay. I wanted to read this because oh man, I lost it. I missed what someone was saying, but they pretty much were saying.
So let me reiterate, just because apparently that it's apparent in the comments. In no way am I personally,
No.
advocating for any kind of violence or any kind of looting. I'm just seeking to explain
Yes.
the phenomenon, and that if you're inclined to focus just on the looting, then you have to have a more holistic view of why the looting is taking place.
I don't
That's
know
it.
why the screen is off, guys. We're watching it here, and I can see it. All right, and we are actually for real back. And we have people joining us. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so as you guys join us, I think, okay, what we were last talking about, I think it's important to be very specific. And I think our heart of what we're saying is that while we absolutely do not condone violence, I think there's a bigger issue if what upsets you is a storefront being defamed. Is that how you say that, defamed? Defaced, thank you. If you care more,
And you're more vocal.
and you're more vocal
About that.
about a storefront being defaced
Versus police brutality.
versus police brutality, that is an issue. Does that make sense? We are not here for violence. No one is saying go, absolutely not. What we are saying is pay attention to people that are more in an uproar and an outrage that a storefront was defaced than they are about lives being taken, innocent lives being taken.
Handbags being looted over bodies being looted.
That's it. That's it. You gotta care more about the life than you care about a pretty sidewalk. That's all. So I'm glad we were able to,
We're done.
oh my God, somebody said your kids are gonna look back at this and be so proud of you all. More importantly, it's about our kids walking, talking, breathing, and being citizens for justice.
Yes.
And safe.
And that the next generation can feel safe walking around. I kind of wanted to throw this to my parents. Sorry. Okay, Claude, you want to come around this way with us?
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to my parents about this because obviously, since it is systemic racism, and it's been going on for generations and generations, I was curious how racism, systemic racism, has affected my parents. I wanted to specifically talk to my papa about it because he shared with us the other day something that he even experienced. And this is someone that fought for our country. Sorry, I'm gonna brag on you. I'll be your PR person for a second. But this is a Vietnam veteran who has earned two Purple Hearts.
Two Purple Hearts.
Two, I only thought one.
Just one.
Just one. He has Purple Hearts and
15.
and 15 Purple Hearts in my heart. And was a Marine and still is a Marine, right? Marine mentality always, forever.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
And I kind of want to even speak on his experience with racism, and more so, how do we break that systemic racism? How do we break it from generation to generation? Why is it that I was raised completely different than they were raised, and our children will be raised completely different than I was? Does that make sense? How it's important that from generation to generation we get better. We should get better. We should be more. Our hearts should grow
Yes,
every
that's
generation.
it.
Yeah.
So go for it, Papa. It's for you to speak. Again, this is super casual. These are just like the conversations that
Just
we've
talk
had.
to us. You don't have to
Right.
worry about
Yeah.
the camera.
Well, you know, as a Puerto Rican born in Puerto Rico, the first thing I have to say, which a lot of people don't know or don't realize, don't remember or whatever, it was never in the history books. If you are born in Puerto Rico and you are a permanent resident of Puerto Rico, you know, Puerto Ricans that live on the island cannot vote for president of the United States. But yet they can be drafted into the U.S. military.
Say that again. You can't vote, but you fight for our
Exactly.
freedom.
Yeah,
Fight for
yeah.
our country. We're American, and we're considered American citizens.
Yes.
You know, but yet if you have permanent residency and you were born in Puerto Rico, and you live there, you cannot vote for the president of the United States. Now, as a Puerto Rican living here in the United States, I can vote for president of the United States. But if you live there and you were born there and that's your permanent residence, you cannot. And yet for years and years and years, you know, I went back on my genealogy to my great uncles, to my grandfather, great grandfather, and I was able to see their draft cards for World War II.
Wow.
You know, they were all drafted into the war. My father was drafted into the war. And so they were living there. They were permanent residents of Puerto Rico, but yet they were drafted into the military and they had to serve. But you know, one of the things that hit me hard the other day was I forgot who it was said that the systemic racism is in every aspect of our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In every aspect.
In every
every
aspect.
aspect, whether it's business or medical or whatever it is.
Education,
Social
government,
security.
entertainment, all of it.
Exactly, and I know that racism has always been a big factor in the military. But
Speak
the
on
other
it,
day,
Papa.
when I heard that the U.S. military might be called in to quell whatever is going on
First
within
Amendment
this country,
rights.
all the
First Amendment rights, the peaceful
E-
protesting,
exactly. It struck a chord and it brought back memories of the time that I was in Vietnam. I was in Vietnam from '67 to the end of '68. I did 2 tours over there, and one of the things that as a Marine, and I'm sure the Army feels the same way, and whatever, the Air Force and Navy. You're fighting, and whatever the cause may be, you're in the military, you're in a state of war with another country or whatever. And so, you're more protecting the guy that's next to you, in front of you and behind you, than you are fighting for whatever the cause is, because the cause may be some crazy...
It's a greater cause, yeah.
A greater cause, but you as a soldier, you're fighting to survive, make it home, and make sure that the guy next to you survives and makes it home. And I was there during one of the fiercest, or the fiercest fighting period of the War of Vietnam, which was the Tet Offensive. It started in January of 1968, and the phase 1 of the Tet Offensive ended on March 28th, which happens to be my birthday. So there was a lull in the war, and then we came into April, and in April of '68,
April 4th.
April 4th, 1968, we got the news that Martin Luther King had been assassinated. So, and that's what, when I heard that the U.S. military is being called in to quell internal United States affairs, the U.S. military was instituted to fight external enemies.
Yeah.
That's right.
Within the country, you have your law enforcement and you have your National Guard, But the U.S. active military is supposed to be enforced to fight against foreign enemies
Correct.
outside of this country. And so when Martin Luther King Jr. got assassinated, we were out there on patrol, fighting a war. There was a small lull after March 28th and into the end of April. And, we got word from white brothers who were fighting alongside us.
Who were allies to you.
Who were allies to our cause, who
People of
were not
color.
racist within the military, let's put it
Straight
that way.
up.
And the thing is, as a Marine, and this happened in the battalion, Marine battalion that I was in. I won't speak for the rest of the military. But the word came down from the higher-ups within the battalion that because of the Martin Luther King assassination, all white soldiers, white Marines,
Listen up.
needed to lock and load and be on the lookout for any rioting or uprising by Black
and brown.
and Latino and brown Marines that might be upset because of the news that they have gotten of the assassination of Martin Luther King. And here, we were all together fighting a war, and we just wanted to survive. We were protecting each other's back, and now
Now you're
You have to
on
look
the
out.
enemy.
now we got to look out for the guy next to us, or the guy behind us, or the guy ahead of us, because they got these orders, and some of them might react to it in a way that they felt, if they saw us gathering together as a group of Black
They
and
even
Hispanics.
thought that
think
you
they
would be
even-
uprising
I
or that
think
you may
that
retaliate.
I think
They were ready to take them
deliberately-
out.
They deliberately wanted to break that trust, right?
Yeah.
That they had between that brotherhood, and that's
Right. Fortunately, again, in our battalion, I don't know about any other battalion, Marine battalion or Army or whatever, the bond that we had prevailed. prevailed.
That's amazing.
But
So
to
just
see-
having those conversations in your home, everybody has experienced racism to some extent. And it's about being vocal, sharing those stories with your children, sharing how these things may affect them and that they feel comfortable coming and telling you if they've experienced racism for themselves.
Exactly.
I saw somebody up here speaking up about colorism and racism amongst the Latino community. And I asked we literally just had this conversation yesterday. We were sitting around this table and I asked my mom point blank period, I see so much of this, I hear so much of this, it exists on so many levels. And I just asked my mom, why don't you think that way? Why didn't you raise us that way? What was your experience growing up that I, as a Latina, okay, and I'm not just, it's important to clarify, I'm not just Latina, I'm Latina, half Ecuadorian, half Puerto Rican. My mother is a Caribbean Latina who has constantly made it very clear to me and has always made it something that we should celebrate was our African roots and our African heritage. I have family members of all different shades and we celebrate that. Hello, in our own family, growing up, people not only didn't believe me and Claudette were sisters, they didn't even think we were the same race.
But Nilda is an outlier.
No, speak on that.
No,
Jerk.
Nilda, you speak on it.
Why
First
are-
of all, I'd like you to address Adrienne's question about your views and how you raised your girls, but I'd also like you to speak about what you've observed, within your family, within your community. She's okay.
I was like, ouch.
As it relates to colorism and racism within
Absolutely.
the Latino community.
So I think everybody knows I was raised in the Lower East Side of New York, and I was born in 53, you figure out the age. But we didn't see, in my community, we really didn't see color. As a Puerto Rican, in my family, my mom was a child of one of 10 children. And my uncles, my mother was very fair, and my Aunt Gloria.
And her brother was
and my
Papa's
brother
color.
was her brother.
My grandmother
uncle,
was see-through and
Yeah.
her brother was Papa's color.
So we didn't see those differences that I can remember. They were never like spoken about, like, oh, he's not good or
Really?
he's a-
Because that's super popular. There's the conversations of El Pelo Malo, like I've heard
my family.
all of it.
Right.
I've heard all of it.
So, however,
in our home, but from others.
however, and with going back generations of what my mother was taught, even though her father was very dark, he was real like a Taino Indian color. I think that they really, in their mind, it was so important for them to be European. It was more
Listen
important
to this.
for them to claim their Spaniard blood in them, which we do also carry. We're not going to put that, we're not going to trash that. But the African blood that we also carry in our veins
kinda like-
was not talked about. And again, you talk about what they were taught in school, what their
It's
family
systemic.
is,
It's systemic.
And-
it comes from the system.
And also in Puerto Rico, like with his uncle was killed in a battle because he was African. He came off of the boat and they rebelled against owners of a plantation. So what I'm trying to say is,
Wow.
like, I somehow,
Great.
I don't know how, to be honest, I was able to take all those things in my mind and sort them out. And even though my mom really didn't sit down and teach me this, something inside of me was, everyone here is equal. We have to love who we are and where we come from. And again, because I was raised in this neighborhood where the black mama was my mama out in the street. She looked out for me, and my mom looked out for her kids. And my black friends from school would help my mother up the elevator or up the stairs with the groceries.
And
There
even
wasn't
that is
this-
so different from.
There wasn't this. Also, I have to tell you that we didn't really, when I was growing up, we didn't have a television. So the news that was coming to us of the rioting and everything that was going on,
During
or the
the civil rights?
demonstrations, was very minimal for us. So we weren't really
privy to it like
right,
that.
exactly. But as far as like what Jared said, why did I feel I just saw through the eyes of what I felt inside my heart. And this is what I wanted to teach my children. I never once told my kids, you have to bring in a Latino boyfriend here to this house, or you got to bring a white or a Jewish.
Which
Never,
clearly
ever, at all.
neither of us did.
Never did. Because I value life,
Yeah.
and you value history, and you value who you are, and where you come from, and you take all that beautiful information and just grasp it and be proud of it. And that's what I wanted to teach my kids.
I have to say, Mom, you have really done a phenomenal job.
I thank
I have to say, I feel, and I will say this, and I think it's okay to say that you genuinely feel a connection to your African roots and your African
do.
heritage. She naturally does, and we felt that.
I did.
We saw her celebrate it, and again, I think it's so important for parents. I'm not a parent, but I'm someone's child, and as the child that experienced watching how my mother spoke about Black people, I remember you saying, "Oh, I can." She don't even know what I'm about to say. It's stuff like this that you got to pay attention to that you say. It wasn't even a conversation of race. I remember we were watching the MTV Music Awards, and artists kept getting up. This is so random. But it's a dumb example, but it's just significant to me. And I will never forget, people were getting up and winning awards, rappers, and their song could be the most ratchet song with mad curse words in it, vulgar on
Praise
all
God.
levels. And they literally would get up in there and be like, first and foremost, I want to thank my Lord Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
And instead of my mom watching that and going, oh, these people, or whatever, because I know other people can have that reaction, she goes, let me tell you something. Heaven is going to be filled with Black people.
I always say
And she
that.
literally said, heaven is going to be filled with Black people. She said, they don't care what they do. I don't care what they sing
love
about,
the
but
Lord.
they always give honor and glory to the Lord.
Yeah.
Right? Think about that exact same situation and what is the opposite that could be said by someone else watching that same show, that they could say around their children, and what is the messaging that they can place. It's a very stupid example, but it is still,
It's a great
instead
example.
of seeing the negative in it and going, oh, that song, to the windows, to the walls, to the what? Like, ugh, right? You could either find the negative in it, or you could look at a group of people and find the beauty and find the positive and point that out to your children and point that out and be like, psh, but they give honor and glory to the Lord. And it's stupid, but I was like, and that's how I viewed it.
But it's all education, right? And it's
Yeah.
all listening.
Yeah.
Because, again,
There's a lot of
when
it
I
is
was-
from ignorance.
It's all love, too,
Yes.
right? If you lead with love,
and I'm honest, when rapping came out and all the cursing and all that kind of stuff, it struck me in the beginning. I'm like, why are they saying all these words? But you know
It's a
what?
different generation.
I started, when I married 23 years ago, when I got married to you. He loves rap. Always has. What's your favorite group? Public Enemy.
See
Public
this?
enemy.
So I couldn't understand
Fight
a
the
lot of
power.
the things, although they didn't really curse a lot, but there were a lot of things, and then all the rappers that came after, they were, But you know something, I sat down and I really started to think about, they're using these words, but what is it exactly that they're saying? There was a message behind the cursing. Right?
So, but even the fact that that's how your mindset works. I want to talk to the mindset. Instead of automatically going, this is not good. Why is it that you think that way? That you think let me hear what they're saying. Let me be, you know what that is? That's a spirit of empathy. Mom, you are an empathetic person, and Jeannie Mai said this on The Reel, and I really love this. She said, our world would be so different if we all would just have some empathy.
Yeah.
Empathy, man, we need to pray a shower of empathy come down on all of us and empathize. And instead of automatically going and
Yeah, but.
attacking and go to empathy. Go to why. Let me hear them. Let me hear them out. Let me not just hear them with my ears, but hear them with my heart.
And this is why we're having this conversation in a multi-generational way.
Yeah.
You can hear the innocence of Jet and Bo and their experience, and then you can hear the history and the layered pain and experience of Papa and Mama Nilda. And I asked Mama the other day, I said, can I ask you a question, Ma? Like, when you look at these riots on TV, when you look at, you know, the footage of what's happening, has anything, I mean, these were teenagers in the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything really heavily different than what you saw then? And it's a sad answer to have to go, no, I don't see any difference. And matter of fact, like when in '92, when the Rodney King beatings happened and all of the riots took place, we used to think, you know, this is before Black Lives Matter became a movement and all this. We used to think people just didn't know. Like they just didn't know the struggle. They didn't know the nuance of it. They didn't know the history of it. They didn't know that this was systemic going back 4 and 5 and 8 and 900 years, as Claude pointed out, from Eurocentric history. Then after the Rodney King beatings, we've come to discover people just don't care. It's not that they don't know, it's that they don't care. And I have such a hard time when 9/11 happens and everybody becomes American suddenly, and we're singing God Bless America on the steps of the Capitol, and we're going, okay, we're all connected now. And then give it time, it all divides again. And here we are in an opportunity to really come together, and we're still hit with, I know you say Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter. Yeah, but. And I keep trying to say, okay, if you have a problem with the tone of it, the skin tone of it, and you really are struggling with this, go back to what Jared, a very, very smart man, said. This is about injustice versus justice.
Correct. And
Period.
educate yourself. And at this point, you don't have the excuse anymore. And I think that's why it was so important for all things Adrienne to participate in Blackout Tuesday, because the concept of it was, don't come here, the little things I gotta tell you on it. Don't check out my selfie on Instagram. Don't be distracted by what's on sale. No, that was for you to take a second there and educate yourself. To take a moment, and if you don't understand, that was your day to, instead of binge watching all things Adrienne, that was your day to educate yourself, to find out more, to research, to empathize, to hear, to listen to other people's stories. And I just thought that was really important. That's why we didn't do this yesterday and why we're doing it today. But in speaking to the generations, like Israel said, I thanked my mom yesterday. Like I literally was in tears yesterday thanking her for breaking a generational curse.
Cycle, yeah.
And today, each and every one of us has an opportunity to break that generational, that systemic racial injustice. We have that opportunity to break it in our families, to break it in our group of friends, to break it in our homes, to break it in raising our children, to however it is that you can come against racial injustice, do something.
Yes.
Do something. Bring up the conversations. Let's keep it real. We all know somebody racist.
Yep.
It's a coworker, it's an auntie, and again, some of it is in pure ignorance. Some of it. But guess what? Now you don't have that excuse anymore. And you certainly don't have that excuse when you're having the conversations. When I've talked to you about it, when I've shared with you, when I've shared my heart with you, when I've shared with you what lays heavy on my mind, when I've corrected you, when I've taught you, you understand? So then we can't blame the ignorance. Oh, they just didn't know.
No.
Well, guess what? Them not knowing now becomes your fault as well.
Wow.
Them not knowing now becomes your fault as well, because if they didn't know, now I'm turning the finger back on you and saying, Why didn't you talk to them about that? Why didn't you check that comment and say, nah, we don't do that. We don't do that here. Tell your children, you hear them making fun of us. No. That is unacceptable, and we don't do that in this home. In this home, we love people. In this home, we are for justice. In this home, we do not tolerate racial injustice. So I thanked my mom for that. I said, thank you, because we benefited from that. Our children will benefit from it.
And I benefited from it.
And there we go. And so on and so on and so on.
Same.
So I want to let you guys know that I know this was 3 separate different lives. I'm going to attempt to have us edit it all together and put it up as one post. But I also want to, in the description below, I want to provide you with ways that you can help. I know so many of us, the first things first, I think the first way you can help is, again, having the conversation in your home, talking to your children, raising up a different generation, recognizing the racial injustice, recognizing it, having empathy. And on top of that, we're also gonna put here some websites that can help you find information, find different ways that you can support your Black community, find ways that you can support Black business owners. There's so much to it that we can't, obviously, we'd be sitting here for days and days, and we'll do more of this. But I love you guys. I'm grateful for people that tuned in, because guess what? I said what this was gonna be on my Instagram, and the fact that over 3,000 of you joined us for this conversation. I'm just looking at what's up there now, and it's been more than that, but says that you're willing to open your eyes, open your mind, and open your heart to the conversation. So I pray that when we finish this, that you gather around with your family, have your own internal conversations, search your heart, search your mind, and again, we will provide you with different ways that you can not just pray, but I think it's important that we put action behind our faith. Faith in action is so important, that we take action. So I will provide you with those things. We just wanted to end it with a little song.
A little song, kind of a prayer.
It's a prayer, yeah.
I almost want Mommy to set this up, because we were talking this morning, back to the generational blessing part of this, right? Mommy was talking about Tita.
Yeah.
And how
My
she
grandma.
would pray. How did you explain to Mom, because it was so great, and how you took that on?
Yeah, so a few months ago when this song came on the air in Elevation, it just hit me. And even talking about it, I get emotional, because I remember my mother always praying at the end of her prayer, always praying for her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, and the generations to come after. And I always, you don't pay that much attention when you're growing up, the generations to come after. You don't put it together. After you become a parent, you kind of now see it, right? You kind of like now understand it. And that's what I believe today. That's part of my prayer. It's been part of our prayer for the past 23 years. And I always prayed for my kids and for their husbands when they were little. I always did,
And here we are. Careful what you pray for.
But I started praying, and I remember the first time that I started to pray for the generations to come after them. And I would pray for my kids, grandkids, and the generations to come after, and those after and after. So that when this song came about, that I first heard it just hit me. And I said, that's why, as a family, I believe, my mother's prayers for the generations to come after covered us. They've covered us.
And what
I
we do
really,
in this generation will affect
The
the
next.
next,
and the
but
next.
we have
and
to
the
Jet and
pray.
Bo's kids and
Yeah,
husbands.
but we have to pray ahead and ahead for that covering over them, and never forget that.
That the prayer will set your intention for action as well.
Exactly,
So you're doing as you're praying.
exactly. Yeah.
The Lord bless you and keep make his face shine upon you, and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Lord, turn his face toward you and give you peace. Singing amen, 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 amen. Oh, amen, amen, amen.
His favor be upon you and the 1,000 generations and your family and your children. I can't even say that.
And the children, may his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children and their children. Sing it again. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going, in your reaping and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you. Amen. 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 Yeah. Amen. 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 God, we speak to every family today. Speak peace to every family, every household, every child of God. Oh God, if we've ever needed you before, we sure do need you now. We sure do need you now. We pray for our nation today, God. Let your favor be upon us. Let your favor and protection be upon us. Every life, every child, every black life, God. Oh, comfort and keep us, protect us, Jesus. We pray, and we pray, and we say, Amen. 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 It's the cry of our heart, Lord. Amen. Heal our nation. Amen. Heal our household. Amen. Amen means it is so. We say, Amen.
love you guys so much. Thank you for joining us. Later on today, Israel is doing Worship Wednesday. We do that as a family as well. We love you guys and we hope to see you there. Be safe.
Thank you, guys.
Black Lives Matter.